If the governor has it his way, higher education will receive a 3% increase in the upcoming budget. Is it enough? Does the increase come with strings attached? We'll discuss the future of Michigan's workforce and the role its universities play on West Michigan Week. And thank you for joining us on West Michigan Week. On our panel, Carol Valet, Grand Rapids Business Journal. Thanks for joining us. And Dave Murray, you've made the walk across the Blue Bridge. MLive Media Group, thank you so much for joining us. And our guest today is Grand Valley State's President, Thomas Haas. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thanks, Patrick.
Well, Doctor, it's been a long year. The budget, or at least the proposed budget, is out. At first glance, what do you take away from the increases that universities will see this year, the 3% across the board? A good sign, at least, a starting point?
I think it is. This is the first time in probably a dozen years we're actually talking about an increase. And that's, to me, very positive. The governor last year said that we had to make sacrifices, and he asked the universities to take a 22% budget cut. It was mitigated to 15% if we kept the tuition below a certain level. So I'm really pleased with the fact that what is being proposed here is something I've been wanting to see for now almost my 6 years as president of Grand Valley State: performance and outcomes.
There are 15 universities in the state. We're going to take a look at a graphic right here. We didn't have room to put all the states on the universities on this graphic, but you'll see the percent of increase. And Grand Valley, you must have met all the metrics, potentially receiving the largest increase of all the state universities.
The increase, 7.6%, is about $3.9 million one time. It's kind of a bonus for doing a good job, and I think we have been doing a good job. These metrics are based over the last 3 years of measurement with outcomes approach, graduation numbers, graduation and critical skill areas, Pell Grant recipients, and to some extent, too, efficiencies as well. I do know that over the past 10 years, Grand Valley's basically doubled the number of graduates. And in the STEM areas, this is the science, technology, engineering, math, and the medical field, it's almost 80% increase over these past 10 years as well. And our increase in the Pell Grant students has increased a whole bunch. So we're about, I think, 7,000 students now. Last year was 6, the year before under 5. So we're seeing that increase as well.
But this one time, this increase, when you look at it, I mean, you gave me an example of what it represents. It's not all that much overall.
Well, in terms of our overall budget, it's about a penny in terms of the relative percent on overall budget. It's 3% of one-time money associated with the allocation we get from the state. But at the end of the day, our base funding is the same this year as it was last year, and we have to operate then within the means that we are receiving both from the state and from tuition dollars.
So it's not something you're counting on, nor something that makes a tremendous difference in terms of the budget overall for GVSU. And so how do you plan that down the road? You're not likely to ever see the funding levels that, well, over the decade you're talking about, have been reduced by 33% for colleges and universities. So if you're not going to get back there, then does it not come back down to tuition to sustain some of the programs and the structure that you've built in here now?
Well, a good example of that, our cost per student corrected over the past 10 years has gone up $25 over the last 10 years, whereas our tuition has gone up by $3,200. Why? Because the state has cut back by $3,200, almost dollar for dollar. So our approach is to maintain the quality that we need, also affordability, because we keep our tuition below the average for the universities here in Michigan, and we make sure that we are running as effectively and efficiently as we can. I guess you would say the appeal that universities are raising their cost a whole bunch doesn't pan out when you look at the trends that we're seeing.
You've also had sizable opportunities with staff, with unions, with you know, with the professorial group, and in terms of health care benefits and that type of thing. I don't know that that's been across the board either.
Last year, we asked our faculty and staff to accept a 0% wage increase, and we readjusted the health benefits to a now 80-20 split.
80-20, that's what I thought. Yeah.
Can you tell us how Grand Valley's state aid compares to that of the other 15 or the 14 state colleges, especially when you break it down per student?
Sure. On a per student basis, we're getting $2,350 per student. The average is just under $4,600 per student, and the max level is about $7,200 per student. So you can see the wide gap.
Why is that?
It is, in essence, because we have grown in enrollment, and because of the type of funding strategy that the state was using. It was whatever you got in your base the previous year, and if you went up in enrollment, it didn't matter. So if you went up in enrollment, you basically took a cut, and if your enrollment went down, you took a plus. Somewhat irrational approach when it comes to budgeting. But that $2,300 per student puts us in the bottom 5% nationally.
Wow. Now, we know what the state offers and what your budget is. We know what the state is looking to grow that. What do you need? What would you say the accurate number is for Grand Valley to do the best education, deliver the best education it could?
Sure, I'm going to answer that in two ways. One, we operate about $2,300 below the average. You multiply that out by 25,000 students, it comes to $56 million, just to get us to the average. They did have in place for a number of years a floor funding level of $37.75. If we did that, you can just make the math simple. $37.75 minus $2,300, you can see where we should be. And the state has actually put that floor funding level out in previous years.
But have you ever gotten a floor level?
No, sir.
I'm just wondering, you know, you were previously the president of colleges and university presidents in the state of Michigan, and certainly have worn the hat for them with the legislature for an extended period of time. And if you look at that in terms of the state, and the fact that the state, you know, whether we're in Grand Rapids and there are MSU grads living here or U of M grads, I mean, it's all important in the role of continued education. So if you're wearing that hat, what concerns you about research universities, especially having less opportunity to achieve these incentives, even if it's a penny more for this coming academic year?
The real assets we have here is the diversity of public higher education. We have the three major research institutions. You have regional campuses as well, and that model is very, very effective. So what we do is look at the various missions that we have, and I think the investments need to be made in terms of really affecting the outcomes that we want. The research institutions are providing great economic development opportunities. The regional campuses the same, only with a different focus. For instance, Grand Valley here in the Tri-County region is $680 million per year in terms of economic impact. And so I don't say it's an either-or situation. It really is a combined understanding of the impact of higher education across the state.
I really hope to get this into, you know, a dozen years ago, people across the state, 24% thought college education was important. That's obviously changed in this economy to a great extent. In fact, a poll by Business Leaders of Michigan showed 90% of Michigan residents now say it's vital to have that college education. Do you see then the role of public universities becoming as important as K-12? I mean, in terms of leadership and expansion opportunities.
I think the whole educational system is important for the state of Michigan.
Certainly the feeder to you is important.
You get the early childhood, you go through K through 12, you go to higher educational institutions, and then post-educational opportunities as well. Why? Because the business leaders see this impact on their bottom line. They need the talent. We're in the business of producing that talent.
Is there a contradiction? I mean, right now I'm looking at the higher ed budget here, and the governor says he wants at least 60% of Michigan citizens to possess a high-quality degree or credential by 2025. But when you're not putting your money where your mouth is, and I know that you'll be going before committees, all the state university presidents will be doing this. What is the message? You have to be very careful, I would imagine, but in essence, what is the message, and what do the legislators hear, and what do they want to hear?
Well, I think they want to hear that we're producing graduates that are necessary for the vitality of the state of Michigan. But through the years, their public policy dictates continued cuts. 30 years ago, we were getting about 70 cents on a dollar. Now Grand Valley, 17 cents on a dollar, and that cut is impacting our students because then they have to take loans out to pay these differentials because tuition has gone up. But as I said before, our cost per student is flat. What I want to ask the state legislators is, in the state constitution it says, shall maintain public higher education. What does maintain mean? And 30 years ago, it meant 70 cents on a dollar. Now it says 17 cents on a dollar. If, in fact, the state maintained its and sustained that 70 cents, our tuition would be much, much, much lower, and therefore the debt load would be much, much lower as well.
At this point, your tuition, you're at private school levels in some cases.
That's not absolutely accurate.
Well, I'm just saying.
Okay.
I know. What I mean.
My $9,700 in terms of tuition relative to some of the independents is markedly less expensive.
I misspoke. What I meant by that, when it came to funding and that switch that's taking place,
Sure.
you're operating more like.
Absolutely.
That's
In
what
fact,
I meant to say.
The percentage tied to tuition.
Exactly. That's what I meant.
My business plan is such that I do need to operate more like an independent college. I have to look at fundraising, I have to look at development, I have to look at tuition and making sure that my price points are where they should be. So you're absolutely right. I am operating more like an independent college, but one thing that drives me is the fact that we're offering a degree which is a public good, and that public mission is very, very important to this president.
Will you also be incorporating more aspects of that town-gown relationship through Seidman School, through the expansion up on the hill of the health profession school?
Through the last 51 years now, it started with Bill Seidman, and he said we need to keep talent right here in West Michigan. And his vision is coming into reality. We are developing more of that talent and keeping it right here. In fact, year over year of those that are working, last year it was 58%, now 76% those working right here in West Michigan in their area of study, the vast majority of them. So the town gown, as you said, the public-private partnership that has nurtured Grand Valley over these past 50 years continues to nurture us and provides really a margin of excellence and quality that we would not have otherwise.
We're going to take a quick break, and when we come back, more with Dr. Thomas Haas, president at Grand Valley State University. And we're back with more West Michigan Week, and our president, Dr. Thomas Haas, president at Grand Valley State University. And we're talking about the growth and what's taking place in Grand Rapids and really across the state, opening satellite campuses and different offices across the state. But here in Grand Rapids, how important is it to see visually that presence and that growth in the downtown metro area, not only in Allendale, but downtown? And when you have legislators that come to town and they visually see something.
It's quite important. And that's why I wanted to see the William Seidman Center come right here, right along the river. It was a natural. In fact, we have 8 colleges, 6 of which call Grand Rapids home. And many of those are offering the graduate levels programs in engineering, education, and the health sciences and nursing. And I'm committed to Grand Rapids. I'm committed to West Michigan and the rest of the state, but we are, in fact, it's more than just visual. It's the programming that's going to come out of these centers. For instance, a brand new, fully integrated MBA program, 14 months, working with local businesses and community members to create the new MBA full-time, and they can earn money along the way. That, to me, is innovative. One of the things that Grand Valley is known for is part of the innovation that's necessary in our curricular design and in the bricks and sticks.
And speaking of which, the Center for Innovation and Entrepreneurship is all a part of that as well.
Absolutely.
There's a lot of growth taking place there, and I know that there's been a lot of investment. Is that paying dividends early on in the early stages of this program?
Absolutely. Got to have a good director in Kevin McCurran in the CEI, and it is paying dividends and will continue to pay that way too. And one of our opportunities as a business ourselves is to invest in West Michigan, and we're doing that.
Certainly the programs, especially 3 at once, the Pew Library out at the Allendale campus and the Seidman School, and also health professions all coming almost on top of one on top of another. There's certainly a sense that Grand Valley has become a community developer, that Grand Valley is now the most significant player, at least in this last year, in terms of downtown development. And there's certainly been some stigma that there's cause and effect in terms of tuition and building. Not too long ago, even the protests among the student body. So I wonder if you can sort of explain those differences. I mean, one is both tremendous private funding from the community put back into the university to keep that talent here. But again, that perception that Peter's robbing Paul.
It's a great question, because the reality is, for instance, with the Seidman Center, we're able to create this with philanthropic support and also some tax credits that we got from Brownfield and Newmarket. At the end of the day, there'll be no student tuition dollars going into that building. We're looking at the library. The library was on for numbers of years for capital outlay. We just couldn't do it any longer with a library that was built for 5,000. Now we have 25,000 students, and the Mary Item Pew Library.
Revolution. And the information revolution.
Absolutely. So we have now a Learning and Information Commons named after Mary Item Pew. Bob Pew and his daughter Kate provided the lead gift. We have been through the years reducing our debt load year over year. We accelerate that, and we're able now to take some additional bonding, still keeping our Standard & Poor's rating at A+, and there'll be no increase in tuition to pay for that either. Well, we at Grand Valley are very, very, we're good stewards, I guess you'd say, of the dollars we get from the philanthropic community and our student tuition dollars as well. But those two projects are going forward with minimal, if not zero, impact on raising tuition.
Well, you get an extra penny for any of this, and I know we're going to get into metrics here in a minute, but yeah,
actually, we were buoyed by another part of the message that came out with capital outlay. The governor did say that we will be one of a few projects that are authorized to go towards planning for a new lab science building on the Allendale campus. We may not see that for another 5 years, but at least there's going to be investments made in those areas that are important to us, and that's in the sciences.
Sure. Go back to the governor's budget for a second. He has a carrot-based philosophy where he laid out goals for the universities to meet in terms of graduation and retention rates and number of degrees awarded, and even degrees for those STEM fields. Is that a fair way to have universities earn their state aid?
Well, what I like the fact is that there are performance metrics that are going to be tied to certain outcomes that are priority for the state. The Grand Valley is known for its liberal arts education. That's going to provide the underpinning towards the professions. So I think that if there's going to be a focus, this makes good sense to me.
Does this fall in line? I know the president was in Detroit a week or so ago, and they gave this warning, essentially, to universities that you have to keep tuition down, and if not, there will be these penalties. You're in a good position. I mean, how did you take that comment that was made by the president, and did you feel, okay, fine, we're already meeting these?
Well, we're
these
meeting
metrics?
the metrics with the governor. We're meeting some of the metrics with the business leaders proposal that came out earlier this week in testimony to the Senate. What is going aside from this conversation is I have accountability towards the students and to the state. What is the accountability for the state to produce the same outcome that we want together? What is that maintenance, and what is the maintenance of effort? And so that's the question I have, is there also a partnership with the state that needs to be explored?
Not as long as they're spending more on prisons, you know, and by the millions. But and so that priority has certainly been lost among legislators and governors of both Republican and Democratic parties. So what will ever make that difference? Do you think it might ever go back? Or are all the colleges and universities more rapidly becoming private schools and institutions?
We are definitely, because of the policies of disinvestment, we are operating more like an independent school. We have to. But this is where I'm optimistic. I'm optimistic that the business community sees why we are here, because we're providing the fuel for them. We're providing the talent. We're providing them the economic engine to support them. And I think the business community is going to help, with that approach, help the state legislature realize their opportunity and obligation to support higher education. And that's where I think the disconnect is. Why is tuition as high as it is? It's fundamentally associated with the fact that the state has cut its appropriation. Clear and unambiguous.
Well, there was a report a couple weeks ago about the university fund balances around the state, and there were several billion, not in the endowments, although there were several billion there as well, but in the fund balances. Not necessarily Grand Valley, but in some of your institutions around the state. Is it difficult for the state to justify spending more tax dollars on programs when universities have stockpiling billions of dollars in their fund balances?
And it's a great question, because again, those reserves, if we're going to call it that, give rise in a state like Michigan for the universities to go out and bond, to go out and establish their ratings. For us, it's A+ ratings. So those are the financial ratios. And at Grand Valley, we're more stable now than we've ever been. And I think that's by virtue of being good stewards of all the dollars that we have. Now, would we have to have those quote-unquote stockpiles of money if the state was appropriating us at the 70 cents level as we had a generation or two ago? No. But this is a means for stability that I think the state would want us to have as an asset that the state has in its public institutions.
So that allows you to dip into that to keep costs down or keeps costs from spiraling further than they have.
And also provide the opportunity for us to create the bricks and sticks that are needed to produce the STEM graduates or the medical graduates that we want to keep here right in Michigan. It provides a stable base, and I think that's a good business principle to follow.
In terms of enrollment, you obviously make room. The more, the merrier. I'm wondering what the ratios are. I think some people are always surprised by the number of students you're drawing from East Michigan as well as West, and then also the ratios of students from out of state who may be coming into this pool of potential graduates and talent for us.
Well, for us, we have about 4+% out of state and international students. We can report for the first time in quite a while. We have students from every county coming to Grand Valley. That's pretty, even Ontonagon. So it's really kind of nice to see that. But we are attracting significant numbers of students from the Southeast coming over here as well. For us, I have to look at the capacities. We have probably 1.2 million square feet below the average for a university of our size. So we have to look at the space dynamics. I have to look at my staffing. My staffing ratios is 44 students to 1. The average in the state of Michigan is 22 to 1. Our student to faculty ratios is about 19 to 1. The average is 16 to 1. So we're doing as well as we can with one of the drivers, and that's our HR costs. So where are we in terms of bringing in students? In order to achieve that double of graduation rates in the last 10 years, I increased my student body by about 40%. So we are doing, if you want to look at it, the old adage, more with less. I don't really like that statement, but I do like doing the best we can with what we have.
Are you still, and we're in the last minute here, are you still trying to speed students through in 4 years and they still get the bonus?
We get that grand finish. I'm glad you mentioned that. In fact, I just noted that our 4-year graduation rate puts us third in the state. We are now percolating at almost 38%, vice 26%. We're going to be pushing into that category, that second category. So that's one of the strategies that will help us with capacity and also help graduate numbers get out there at a cheaper price because they can save a semester or two.
All right, we'll have to end it there. Carol Valet, Grand
Patrick.
Rapids Business Journal.
Thank you.
Dave Murray, MLive Media Group, and of
Thank
course our guest, Dr. Thomas Haas, President of Grand Valley State University. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Patrick.
And thank you for joining us this week. We'll see you next week on West Michigan Week.